According to a legend, Urmila slept continuously for 14 years. It is believed that during the 14 years of exile, Lakshmana never slept to protect his brother and sister-in-law. Lakshmana advised that his wife Urmila can sleep on his behalf. After hearing this, the goddess of sleep, Nidra Devi asked Urmila and Urmila happily accepted it. Urmila was the daughter of King Janaka of Mithila and Queen Sunena and the younger sister of Sita. She was married to Ayodhya King Dasharatha's third son Lakshmana. Lakshmana and Urmila had two sons, Angada and Chandraketu. She was as dedicated to Sita as Lakshmana was to Rama, and she was the reincarnation of goddess Nagalakshmi. According to some folklore, it is said that they had a daughter called Somada. Love comes in unknown forms, and the stories about them are many. Even in our own mythology and legends, there are tales chronicling the love of so many that one could admire the sacrifices they made for each other. Some stories became quite popular, while the others fade over time. But if one searched through our epics and mythologies, they could unearth those faded stories, though they might never find the varied versions. One such version of such tale is that of the love Urmila bore for Lakshmana. The Ramayana is quite popular for showcasing the love story of its protagonist and the main characters, Rama and Sita, but little is known about Lakshmana and Urmila. It sings praises of how Rama moved heaven and earth to find Sita when Ravana, the Asura king of Lanka, abducted her, which led to the Battle of Lanka, where the latter was killed. We all know the story, but are we aware of the fact that just like Sita was a feminine figure known for her sacrifices, her sister Urmila harbored a simple personality as well? So what is the story behind Lakshmana and Urmila? Urmila sacrificed something too. Before we learn about her sacrifice, let us get introduced to her. Urmila was Sita's sister, as is well known. Manthara, when she poisoned Kaikeyi against Rama and Sita, led Kaikeyi evoking the boons that King Dasaratha owed her, and she demanded that Rama and Sita be exiled for 14 years. Dasaratha acquiesced to the queen's demands after a lot of time and unwillingly orders Rama and Sita to leave the palace. Rama and Sita in return convinced the king that he should let them go and crown Bharata as the king of Ayodhya. Lakshmana was adamant that if Rama and Sita were to leave the palace, he would accompany his brother and sister into their exile. When he wouldn't budge, Urmila too wanted to accompany her husband. But Lakshmana refused. He wanted her to help take care of the royal household and his parents, and perhaps help them in some way or the other. He wouldn't have her in the forest with him. Lakshmana said that he didn't intend to sleep and would guard Rama and Sita day and night. So Urmila stayed behind and watched her husband leave with Rama and Sita. Urmila stayed back to do her duty towards her in-laws and the people of Ayodhya, knowing she would not see her husband for 14 long years. For this reason, Lakshmana's sacrifice and Urmila's sacrifice is truly a fascinating love story. It talks of a sacrifice that was never acknowledged or upheld in history. Lakshmana was a man of his word and watched over his brother and sister-in-law day and night. On one such night, Nidra Devi, the goddess of sleep, came to him and asked him to consider sleeping and relieving himself of his self-imposed duty. Lakshmana didn't budge. He asked her to overlook his sleep. Seeing his loyalty towards his elder brother and sister-in-law, the goddess granted him a boon on the condition that someone else would have to sleep for 14 years to make up the balance. Lakshmana then suggested that the goddess should visit Urmila and ask her to help. When the goddess visited Urmila and explained Lakshmana's loyalty, she sacrificed 14 years of her life for the love she bore for her husband and to help him carry on his duty towards his brother and sister-in-law. This proved to be a boon too, because Urmila agreed to sleep, Lakshmana stayed awake and defeated sleep. It was because of Urmila Lakshmana got the power to stay awake 24/7. Even when we hear this story for the first time of Urmila's sacrifice, we cannot help but feel sad for her. Yet, we still admire for the lengths she went to keep her husband safe. Urmila in Ramayana sadly lingers in the background, yet it is still a strong indicator of a love story that ought to be admired for the sheer faith and loyalty alone. Urmila never found pride of place in Indian mythology stories and remained a forgotten heroine in the epic Ramayana. But the real sacrifice was probably made by Lakshmana and Urmila. It talks about the invincibility of love to a different level. Urmila's role in the war against the evil in Ramayana was indirect but extremely important. Love has enormous power and it affects people, their actions, and the events either directly or indirectly. Urmila's sacrifice enabled Lakshmana to be awake 14 years, and the boon was to remove one of the most formidable warriors in Lanka's army, who could have otherwise proved a thorn to Rama and his followers.